Overreaction Theater, Act 1. Justin Fields is mobile. Trey Lance can throw it more than 40 yards. And Rhamondre Stevenson rolled up yards as the Patriots' number 5 running back into the game. Those and more this week on the Footballguys Dynasty Show. And Jordan, it's here, the preseason. And man, what that means is every single data point is going to be the most important thing in our Dynasty lives.
Yeah, I just got to say, like, what a sequence Rhamondre Stevenson has. So we're big fans, but I got to say, like, it's pretty amazing. So he is basically running back 5 in this game, behind JJ Taylor, behind Damian Harris, behind Sony Michel, right? Behind James White, barely making the roster. And what we're going to take from this is 10 for 27 and 2 touchdowns with a 91-yard touchdown. The whole sequence of how it happens is just even more outrageous because it's at the end of the game. Washington goes down. They have a 15-play, 92-yard drive that takes 5 minutes. They're down 2. They go for 2, don't get it, and then don't kick an onside kick it down the field to the Patriots with a minute and 22 left on the clock. The Patriots take a knee on first down. And then Washington calls a timeout. Like, by all rights, the game should be over. It's incredible. And then Stevenson gets a 2-yard run, and then
Enter the magic.
Then third down, it's a 91-yard touchdown against.
Well, you got to try to get the first down, Jordan.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So here we are talking about a play that in reality should
never happened.
Yeah. But no, I'm happy for him. But let's be realistic about when it happened, how it happened, who it happened against, and have some tempered expectations.
Right. He was going up against somebody that's going to be going to the game in 4 weeks because they're a fan in the area, not someone that's actually, part of the 53-man roster. Yeah. And again, we're two folks that are Stevenson fans, and the context is important here. I say one of the biggest things from the preseason you can read about running backs is, yes, I mean, you're watching them and seeing their skills and how they translate, but it's what rotation, are they a part of? Are they moving up? Let's see if Stevenson is, dare I say, ahead of JJ Taylor next week. Could that be a possibility? But Sony Michel not being traded, still on that team, is one of the big hindrances here because Stevenson leapfrogging. And I wonder with Stevenson, a lot of people probably glad-handing themselves about, I took him at 306. I'm a genius. Well, if it's a 24-man roster, let's see if you still have him September 30th with waivers running 6, 7, 8 times between now and then. And he's just buried, absolutely buried on that depth chart by that point in time. You still holding firm? Still a good pick? You gonna stay long-term perspective there? Those would be some of my questions because that roster spot pressure is real. And if Stevenson's not getting a sniff over Michel, Harris, White, I think that's the minimum, right? That it would be a surprise if he's playing over any of those guys early in the season without injuries.
Yeah, I wonder what the market is on Sony Michel. I think he's actually been better statistically. You look at some of the advanced metrics and stuff. He's been better than I think given credit for in the Dynasty community. And if, I wonder how he's treated by the NFL marketplace, in all honesty. So I'll be interested to see if there's a trade there. If he makes the roster, that's been something that's been bandied about a little bit here early on in the off season. So I'll be interested in that. But I think that's really a runway for Stevenson to be relevant.
Yeah. And for the quarterbacks, for Justin Fields, hey, he knows how to run towards the end zone with an open field. I did not know that was part of his skill set, so I'm adding that. I'm pushing him up my rankings this week. And he started out slow. I would also point out, going up against second team, I'm sure a mix of third team defenders. And they've said, Andy Dalton, he's our plan to start. We'll see about that. But it's a preseason debut. I look for just, does it look like they can hang? Does it look like they're comfortable? I'm looking at, some accuracy things, some arm strength things, how does that translate? But the actual stat line for Fields is one that let's slow down here a little bit. And we knew he was a dual threat guy.
Yeah, he goes 14 for 20, 142, 7.1 yards per attempt. We'll take it, a touchdown. I find, I look at some of the, I look at preseason a lot through, hey, what questions do we get answered? in terms of things we had coming in about players' profiles. What do we get answered? What was the big thing about Fields? He holds on to the ball too long. You want to guess who had the longest time to throw in the NFL in week 1 of the preseason? You guessed it, Justin Fields. So that's still something that we need to see. We need to get answers on. How's that going to work, right? Is that something they're going to try and coach out of him? Is that something that they're going to try and emphasize? How they sort of do those things? Is that decision-making problems, or is it just a design of the offense? I think we're going to have to see on that. That's not really how the offense was designed last year. We'll see now if it's changes or if he's missing things. But that's something that I take from his performance that's beyond just the box score that I think is important.
Yeah, and for many folks who aren't grinding away at the preseason tape, then a lot of them are seeing highlights and then box score scouting. And I find it interesting that Trey Lance, that on Twitter, all I saw on my timeline, this is after I do all of my work, I go in there and all I see is the retweeted touchdown throw about 462 times across my timeline alone. And then I look at the box score, and you would think that was his only notable play. And frankly, I mean, notable is a relative word, but it was. And so for folks that are looking at the box score, you would say, Trey Lance, you stink. And then, but you look at the one big touchdown throw and you go, wow, he's awesome. I would notate he had some drops, and there were some other things going beyond the box score of, the low completion rate. And he didn't run at all, which I think is going to be the Shanahan rope-a-dope, that you're not going to see any of the stuff they're actually going to do with Trey Lance until the season and whenever he gets into the game. But with Trey Lance, I found it was almost the opposite of Justin Fields, where we wanted to see something and we saw something, therefore we know now he's great.
Yeah. And I think the other one is, between Fields having the questions and sort of that stuff, I think that I was watching Trey Lance, and I'm probably going to go at some point. I'll just go and watch every snap right in a row of his this preseason. But 3 turnover worthy plays. So the big play is nice, but he ends up going 5 for 14, $128. That's nice. Basically, all of it's on one play. 3 turnover worthy plays. I notated him missing some. Just missing his clock needs to speed up. I mean, there was, I think it was Wayne Gallman was like wide open, right in his face, off pressure. It was like right in his face. And as he was looking at it, Gallman would have been right over the top for an enormous gain, right through a wide open middle of the field. And he just didn't process it. So he still has some, he's played one game in 24 months. And that was, that's like a glorified exhibition. So we got to speed it up. The touchdown's obviously nice for Lance, but I think there are questions that we need to have answered about his play as well.
Yep, absolutely. And I think Trey Lance is more at risk for this than the other rookie quarterbacks, Justin Fields and others, maybe Mac Jones as well, that Jimmy Garoppolo as the 49ers quarterback, 49ers getting some guys back from injury, projected to be a good team. If they start with Garoppolo and they're a good team, this could be an Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes type situation of why rock the boat? Why would we go towards something else when we're 4-2, 7-3? We're just churning along towards the playoffs. Nothing's broken. Now, Jimmy Garoppolo might get broken, but if again, nothing's wrong, don't be surprised if Trey Lance is going through this year and, there's a few snaps here and there, some packages, maybe some goal line work, but nothing that of the sense of Garoppolo is costing us games. He's the problem. We're a good team otherwise. We've got to shift over week 4, week 6 to Trey Lance when they're a good team. So I think he's at risk of sitting where Justin Fields, the Bears might be worse faster or think that Andy Dalton is the problem, and we're going to give Fields a shot. So that's why we always preach, with rookies, but especially quarterbacks being fantasy viable or fantasy impactful, you got to have a decent clock, because sometimes they sit longer than you want. And frankly, again, year one quarterbacks, now we got some mobile guys, so that helps, but a lot of times they aren't as productive as you would like. They're more like higher variance QB2s with some moments.
Yeah, for sure. It's interesting to me too, as I look at this, like the betting lines, some of the betting lines here for the Super Bowl, like you look at the 49ers, and they're right there with Green Bay in terms of being 14-1 to win the Super Bowl. The Rams are slightly better. The Buccaneers are the significant favorite in the NFC. But as I sort of look at that, I'm like, what divisional game are you going to go into in the playoffs, and you're going to be like, yeah, we feel good about, like, we feel like we're the favorite against anyone in the NFC because of the quarterback play, right? And so it's a really interesting conundrum that they have, because I think Lance gives them a higher ceiling ultimately, but is it really as a rookie? And so that's the question that I have, and I'll be interested to see. And I'll say too, I cover, and if you don't subscribe to Footballguys, like, the training camp reports are worth it. So we cover all 32 teams, and they week 2 comes out tomorrow. Trey Lance has not taken first team snaps. So contrary to all the reports coming out of camp and the coronation of King Trey, he has not played with the first team offense. So very, like, sparingly in a couple of packages. It has been the Jimmy Garoppolo show. So I do think, we jokingly said this is overreaction theater. We're here to pour cold water on it. That's one that hasn't really taken, I think there's a disconnect between the fantasy community and what's actually happening.
Yep, great point. And call out to the Footballguys daily email update for things like the training camp report. You want to know the latest on Deshaun Watson or vital injuries from now through your fantasy championship. You want to go to the Dynasty Show direct link to join that email list, which is join.footballguys.com/Dynasty Show. And Jordan, we got some Dynasty trades to discuss this week. And I wanted to pick out some that had hot button players, one of them being Trey Lance and Superflex. So that's going to be a big one that I kind of wonder how the market's going to move. I love the liquid player value landscape from now through the end of the season, because everything's pretty much trailing data. You can't find this sticky, ADP from the last 3 weeks has been pretty static. We haven't had a lot of movers, but we're going to get movers, and your market's going to move wildly league to league. We've got 12-team Superflex, and we've got Trey Lance and Paris Campbell for Antonio Gibson and Sam Darnold.
This doesn't seem like enough. I mean, you're taking, I think, a huge downtick in quarterback. And we like Gibson, but with what you can get for Trey Lance right now, I think this isn't enough.
Well, because he goes 102, in plenty of super flex drafts that we've seen. And and Paris Campbell, I will just say that he was off to a good start. Now, off to a good start was one game, last year, but he also made a dynamic play downfield this week. So I don't think he's like a complete and utter throw-in. He's got some profile, some pedigree, and big time speed. And we'll see. He could absolutely be the wide receiver 1 or whatever that sort of looks like for the Colts. So he's not just a throw-in. And Darnold, I'm just not super, like you mentioned, that's a pretty big downgrade. And for Gibson, I've already mentioned, got a couple question marks with him. I'm hoping he blows the doors off. I just think there's a lot of reasons that he won't this year. And like you mentioned, I mean, you got to leverage Lance, right? I mean, if you're selling the sizzle, then you better get the steak back. And I would love it.
Wilson back. Like, that's the level you should be shooting for.
Yeah, like I was just gonna say, but I would like, even if that was Cousins or like give me something more stable, and you can sell it to me. You can sell me on the construction of this deal by saying, hey, I need a running back, and I quote unquote downgraded at quarterback, but you got to make it worth your, like, Darnold could be on such a bad track by next offseason that I just hope he gets pulled up. He's got good weapons and a fresh start, but it's a critical year, and he's on the wrong side of the historical rates here to actually put up a top 12 season at this point in his career. All right, Alvin Kamara in a 12-team league. Here we go. Alvin Kamara and Terry McLaurin for, get ready for some pedigree, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Travis Etienne, Brandon Ayuk. I feel like it's a movie. I feel like it's, what is it, Step Brothers, where he goes, that just happened.
So run that back to me again. Kamara,
McLaurin for Edwards-Helaire, Etienne, Ayuk.
Wow. That's a lot. Man,
You've got to be pretty high on McLaurin to not do the deal, right?
I think so. Because you could say like, what's the? I mean, I'm not totally sold on Ayuk yet, but you got to think that he's pretty far range of outcomes behind McLaurin, I think, to justify this. Right? I mean, you're getting two shots at.
Do you think many
I
people?
love Kamara, but you're getting
do you think
two shots at a high end running back in terms of ETN and Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Like, that's a lot of bullets to be firing.
I don't get the people that are like, oh yeah, Terry McLaurin's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver. That crowd, it eludes me in that thought process of, and to me, that's always the mindset that, oh, if they did something in year 1, year 2, they will take a step forward. They are going to be a future wide receiver 1. And we've seen, you can flash all you want, but getting all the way home with like some DK Metcalf, mid wide receiver 1 breakout season is not something that is just given to you. And they added a ton of weapons. I just color me skeptical that McLaurin gets all the way, that he's an alpha and he puts up like wide receiver 8 this year.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the ETN Edwards-Helaire part, I mean, people are selling on Kamara, but yeah, exactly. I mean, you're talking 2 round 1 running backs, a guy that already posted a year 1. ETN is one of the better buys out there, whether it was rookie drafts, especially in Superflex, where sometimes he goes to the late first. But yeah, like I think what you said is apt, which is you got to have Ayuk decently behind McLaurin to do this one. And let's be fair, you're like, oh, I'm a contender, I can't trade Alvin Kamara. Be careful. Like, yes, you can. I mean, who's to say this deal is not out there or something of its kind for you? All right, we got one more Brandon Ayuk one for you. FFPC. So we're dialing back the shallow rosters here. 1 quarterback variety. Kareem Hunt, Rondale Moore, and a third for Brandon Ayuk. Let me ask one prequel question. In FFPC, should you basically always consolidate?
It's interesting because are you consolidating? Like, how much better is Ayuk than Hunt? Would be my question.
Well, I was asking a separate question, but yeah,
right.
Well, right, yeah. Who is more
right.
valuable in the format, right? A running back that is already flex or running back 2 viable, but can blow it up if an injury happens. Or is Ayuk your wide receiver 3, 4, 5? And that's valuable. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd take the Hunt side just because I do think he's got more. Again, I like
running backs.
But I think you lean towards and Rondale Moore's a live out, right? That's I think a situation where you could cash him, and you could honestly, if things continue to progress the way that they're progressing with him, the gap between him and Ayuk might not be that much that you need to pay Kareem Hunt to do it. So, so that's, I think, in his range of outcomes as well.
Okay. Yeah, Arizona is going to be one of my more interesting watches early in the year, just because AJ Green, we're watching that closely. I think we covered him in the past few weeks talking about bounce back wide receivers. They've got DeAndre Hopkins, they've got Christian Kirk, but they had this toy, and you see them use their toy a little bit, within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage 4 or 5 times in that game on all these fun packages that Kingsbury is going to have a blast. And with Kyler Murray, like being able to keep it and pop out the other side, any variant of these of these equations. Oh man, it's going to be a fun watch. They're going to be a tough stop, is what I'll say. All right, we got one more trade this week, and this is going to be another super flex. We've got Michael Thomas for Curtis Samuel, Nico Collins, and a 2nd and 3rd next year.
Oh man. So I've actually been a little bit reassured. We talked about this. I had a brief crisis moment very early on in the Michael Thomas saga that you talked me down from.
You said he's not playing. This is going to be a null set season, and now he's going to be 29, and who knows where we're going to be with Michael Thomas. that happened on this show. What within the last few weeks? It sounds like you're coming. You're coming back. You're coming back.
I don't know if it happened in the show or we had a moment in a text or something, but
Let's
yeah,
hope it wasn't on the show.
Let's hope it was on the show. So I've been reassured. I'm working on a big series, looking at some dynasty values based on where they're going in drafts compared to our projections to try and spot some potential inefficiencies to exploit there. And we project Thomas 15 points per game over 10 games. So if you think about that, like, hey, we project in basically a lost
high wide receiver too,
half of the season, but that is if you can get through and get to a point where you can inject him into your lineup and you're going to get a 15 point per game, I mean, that's expensive to trade for in season. So if you could sort of take that discount right now, again, I think that's on the high end of his range of outcomes where I were to put it. But I was reassured based on the projections, and I feel less horrible about the situation than I did a couple weeks ago. So
they're making up. He's making up with the Saints. Sean Payton's like, hey, come on, let's talk this out. And he's had the surgery. He's going through recovery, and yeah, like you said, a mid-season shot in the arm for your wide receiver core when you're going to be knee deep in some bye weeks. Let's hope the Saints have ironed out probably some early season, just going through those waves with potentially quarterback. What do the rest of their wide receivers look like? But Michael Thomas can come back and just vacuum up those targets like he always has. Like you said, I mean, he's going to be an auto start player for you and might come at a time where you're searching a little bit. So that can almost be like a free square or a trade that you didn't have to make that just coming from your bench into your lineup there. Do want to mention that the Footballguys mobile app is back for 2021. Custom projections to dominate your waiver wire, synced rosters, so it's going to be easy for you to navigate those trades, and it's available in the Apple and Google Play stores. So get that, review it, and enjoy it for 2021. We got quotes from the Footballguys Dynasty Forum this week, and these are going to be some pretty expansive ones. So let's start off with a real low-hanging fruit for the two gentlemen on this show. I hoard running backs as well, and they are much harder to come by.
I hoard them. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if they're hard to come by. Right. I think that's a
dime a dozen off the wire.
Yeah, and I think it's a two-part statement. And one of the things, like this is a good example happened this week. Chuba Hubbard, hey, he's a big uptick guy. If you can get a second for Chuba Hubbard, I did a trade this week that I don't like. It doesn't feel good, and I think a lot of the trades that we do tend to not feel good. I actually think I texted you about. I got ETN. I gave Dylan, which made me squeak a little bit as I was moving to do it. Like the Tin Man. And so Dylan, Harrison, Bateman, and I got ETN. And I said, well, like it's a lot to give up. But then I sort of went through and I said, what waiver claims am I going to make to fill those two roster spots?
Right, you get two freebies.
They're injury away guys, right? They're not, again, it's not glamorous. I'm not picking up Alexander Madison, but I'm picking up an injury away guy if it's a shot at Devontae Booker, maybe something like that. It could be a shot at Kadre Allison, something like that. So you're getting guys that aren't too dissimilar, really, from the impact that maybe a Harris could make. And so that's really
right. It feels like in your trade, it feels like a lot, but the profile, the round one running back that you're getting, you consolidate your probabilities into that. So it kind of bakes in, well, what if Bateman is the wide receiver one? If Aaron Jones goes down, how does that look? You're doing a lot of that calculus, but Etienne, he's the likelihood by you getting to the end of 2022 and he's not like so he had some breakaway stretch, of the running back one and, some strong stretch. And now a lot of people view him as like a top 10 dynasty back, or whether that continues or whatever, you just have options, at that point, your lineup plus, flexibility to do other things. And who knows, maybe you get Bateman's missing a few games and you can get him back, or, Dylan ends up missing a little bit of time and, Jones is still healthy and you're like, I can maybe get him, as part of a different deal. So, but getting ETN probably in the future is going to be a little more tough, more difficult there. Yeah, and what I find funny is you can hoard running backs, and there's still going to be guys off the wire that you're interested in. Like that watch list can always be, oh well, this guy, we've always been talking about machinations. Like we said, well, what if Sonny Michel gets traded? That we could actually see Stevenson as the injury away guy in a best case scenario. We always do this, and we were like, well, what if Peyton Barber is really the Gibson injury away guy? McKissick stays in his role. Like, there's all these little angles that you can play, and try to improve your probabilities there. All right, this is basically Allen Robinson and a late first for Calvin Ridley, which is highway robbery for, wait for it, Ridley.
Late first for Ridley, huh?
Yeah. So what do you think about giving a first to bridge that gap?
I generally hate giving up first for anything. I really don't like it when I'm doing it at the receiver position. I don't think that's a position that you should pay a first.
Shouldn't you arbitrage it and go Ridley to Robinson and pick up the first?
Yeah, that's the side I'm on. Yeah. And listen, I think
people
Ridley
are all over Ridley. Yeah.
I think he's got wide receiver 1 well in his range of outcomes. So I think that's absolutely, I would agree with that. That said, there's a really good possibility that they're within a couple tenths of a win of each other. I mean, Allen Robinson's one of the best in the game, man. I mean, He has been for a while, and we overrate him because he's heading towards 30. He's on that way. He's
only like 1.4.
No one cares anymore. But
he's like only 1.4 years older than Ridley or something. Like they're a lot closer than people think. It's 28 versus 26 and change or something.
That's what happens when you come out at 24 years old, or whatever Ridley came out at. He was old when he came out.
But he was pro ready, Jordan.
Right. Well,
he was pro ready. He was only like a year 3. Yeah, Justin Jefferson next year will be the age of Calvin Ridley when he came into the league. So yeah, hopefully he's pro ready. That's like Cooper Kupp, right? He came in and he's already 25. So yeah,
you better be ready to go at that point. Yeah.
Cooking right away. But yeah, I love what you said about the arbitrage at the wide receiver position, and I love Ridley as much as anybody. But Robinson's got 3 top 10, adjusted points per game seasons and finishes. So let's not, pretend like he's a slouch. He's done that with, comical quarterback play. And, is it better than years past? Probably this year. That iteration, whether it ends up being Dalton or Fields or whatever, it's probably not a downgrade. We'll just start there. All right. Brandon Ayuk has the potential to be a real difference maker. Pedigree, great rookie season, and now he has a big-armed, high-ceiling quarterback coming in.
I think I largely agree with that. I would just the thing I always caution with this is be careful, right? And I wrote something in a Footballguys article that's coming out. We did a roundtable. We're doing the values and stuff, and I said the road to lost money in fantasy is paved with being overconfident on breakouts, right? They will happen, but I think you need to be really cautious on banking on them.
Well, the year too early thing, right? Generally, people do the year too early where it's like, oh, it's going to be their rookie year, or, oh, it's got to be their second year, and it ends up being third.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, there could be, and I think the most likely outcome for Brandon Ayuk is at some point in the next 12 months, he sees a downtick in value. And if that happens, whether that's a lack of production this season, whether that's, quarterback, I mean, it's ripe for it, right? I mean, we could go down a checklist of 10 reasons why his value could fluctuate in season. And I think that's when you can sort of pounce on him. And I tend not to buy the rises in these guys' values because they tend to change a lot.
Yep. And that's a good point. We were talking about wide receivers, but can you give us a little nugget from your recent article last week about the touchdown dependency and touchdown rates for a wide receiver? Give us one nugget from that article you put together over there, and people can find the rest at Footballguys.
Yeah, I love me some Robby Anderson, man, and he just a ton of targets, right? I know everyone's over Terrace Marshall. I don't think he really tanks him. Robby Anderson's going wide receiver 50 in the past month, which is just incredible.
I like DJ Moore, but yeah, that differential is way too much between Anderson and Moore.
And here's the thing too that I'll say, all I care about is how many targets you'll get. That's really to project any sort of efficiencies on that. I don't think we're good enough at this to do that, right? That's a highly volatile stat year to year. And I don't think like, and even if you were to do that, like, is Teddy Bridgewater that much better than Sam Darnold? Right? I can't say that. Like, I mean, he has been probably, but that's not, again, what we're talking about. Like, Bridgewater's a below average quarterback, and Robby Anderson was he was a top 10 wide receiver when you take touchdowns out of it last year. Top 10. So you give him a little bit of positive touchdown variance. I think he was wide receiver 8 when that happened, through last year with non-touchdown scoring. If he gets a little bit of positive variance, I think he can smash his draft cost right now. And he's in a contract year too.
Yep. All right. This one is going to probably give you an aneurysm. This is how aneurysms start, is sentences like this one. And this is in a one quarterback league. I took over a dumpster fire of a team recently with 6 quarterbacks on the roster.
Start
6.
4? Start
4. I actually saw a team in one of my leagues that had more quarterbacks than running backs in a start one, more tight ends, more defenses. They had 4 defenses to 3 running backs. So I guess I found my twin from another mother. All right. So with that team, they say I traded Kyler Murray for Terry McLaurin, and the team had Murray. Here's the 6 quarterbacks it had: Murray, Stafford, Burrow, Locke, Hurts, and Newton. I mean, that you have a problem. Like, you need an intervention to do that, right? Because we
was too good, Chad. What do you
well, and I wanted to say one thing to start, which is they did the right thing, which a lot of times to trade quarterbacks in a start one, you got to trade one of your better guys. You can't try to, like, they couldn't sit there and try to trade Drew Lock or Cam Newton. Like, the demand is going to be someone might want Burrow or Stafford or Murray, maybe Hurts. But that's the point is you got to trade one of your high end guys, but you've got to shed these roster spots. Like, I would be dropping Lock, dropping Newton. Like, you just can't have that many in a stock level of roster. And it happens one at a time. I mean, I say all the time, if you're going to draft one in a rookie draft, like, I really love Trey Lance or Fields or Trevor Lawrence or whatever, you've got to, like, if you already have a couple quarterbacks, you better already be thinking of what your macro plan is, because it can be very easy to get sucked into quarterbacks over and over and over again. And before you know it, you got 6. So, and you just can't come to cut any of them because they're above the line and someone will pick them up. Yeah, they will. But you can't, I mean, 3 is about the limit, the absolute limit in a start one, unless there's like 30 something roster spots.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, and it's again, we've had this discussion. It can be really tough to trade those guys in a start one. It can, like, it's, who's buying Stafford right now? Like, it's really tough. So I do think you sell from the top, right?
Because who's buying a QB2, right? And then and then you need to find maybe the one team in the league where Stafford would be like, I'm looking forward to trading a second for him, because right now I'm sitting on, Winston and Jared Goff, maybe from last year. And, I want to feel, or I like him a lot over Daniel Jones, and that was my plan A for this year. And I actually think they did a good job. Murray for Terry McLaurin, get a guy that you can start at the wide receiver position. Yeah. I mean, exit stage right. And yeah, if Kyler Murray finishes top 3 this year, that's what happens. I mean, but you had to make a move, and you still can't have 5. That would also be my takeaway. And that's why you sit there and you always want to be lean and mean, because, and I'm not saying you have to sit there with one quarterback, but going beyond 2, it better be a real exception that you're making. So,
yeah.
Yep. Any final thoughts on that, just in terms of roster composition? And we're going to be getting into that, obviously, as we get into the season, because every roster spot has a value. You even mentioned that, doing a 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 deal. You have to factor in the available roster spots you are creating, because even though you lost AJ Dillon, and I'm sure it hurt you to actually have that as the deal, but it made sense. And you like, hey, at least I picked up a couple running backs that are going to be injury away types, and the same, a proxy on the discount, blue light special rack of the same type of asset. So,
yeah, I think roster construction is the biggest edge you can get. it's really tough to pick players, right? But if you're doing it right in terms of the allocations of positions and arbitraging between profiles, right? That stuff is where I think you can really make it uh, better and have a real edge on the other GMs in your league as compared to just saying, hey, I think player X is going to be better than Y. Like those things are tough for a lot of reasons to get right. But if you're really working the margins on the roster construction, I think that's where you can really, really get your edge. And like now's the time you should be doing it. You're going to have cut downs. You're going to have, you got to pick up a kicker in a defense, right? You're going to have all those, you got to go from, 32 to 28, whatever. All those things are happening right now. You have to be in that mode to optimize roster construction at this point because it's a big edge.
Yep. And if you're into shows like this, you're a serious fantasy player, and to win consistently, it's a big challenge. It takes a lot of time, and the Footballguys Premium membership is going to be what gives you that edge. You're going to save time, get that edge. To highlight some of the recent content that's coming out, the whole staff in August weighs in for all the skill positions. We go over value plays, overrated, also targets late in your draft, and you're going to get just the global opinion of the staff of who is the most popular within these monikers. Sigmund Bloom has been highly active with trying to pinpoint league winners. I did a post on the same thing. A lot of draft strategy as you play Dynasty, but I'm sure you're in some redraft leagues as well. And August into early September is really redraft season in terms of those drafts. Not as many startup drafts going on this time of year because those slow drafts, people want to make sure they're done. And we're down to about 3 weeks to go. So again, all of that, you're going to get the league winning information and guidance. So head on over. There's a big orange button on the upper right to join now. We'll do the work and you do the winning. So in this episode, we talked a lot about overreaction theater. Just Act 1. Just imagine we have 2 more to go here in the preseason. And we also talked about roster construction, the right ways and wrong ways to look at profiles via Dynasty Trading. We got Michael Thomas coming back alive a little bit. Trey Lance about asking for a little more. Alvin Kamara could potentially be a Dynasty sell at this point because of the potential return you can get. All right, I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues. Soft.